Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We are buzzing as always. Guys, we are recording on Thursday, July 10th. This episode is going to air next week on the 17th, but we have a special day today and we have a special guest. But the day Bitcoin ETH, it happened again, 112.7K per Bitcoin. I think we're due for a vicious run-up. Hasn't happened in a while. That's just my 2 cents, and we're going to get into it with our guest again. Today we have Rines coming back on the show for round dose. Also had the chance to meet him in person in Dubai last year, which was an absolute treat. But Rich, came in hot a couple of years ago, and we took a deep dive into Bitcoin. He is initial contributor to Core DAO and former lead of Coinbase's money movement engineering. He's a self-taught engineer and a successful entrepreneur with ventures like Element Wallet and AutoReach. His expertise lies in building 0 to 1 everything, growth and scalability with a passion for Bitcoin and decentralization. Rich, had a blast with you on the first epi, and this is long overdue, but good to have you back, mate. How are you? How's everything?
Doing good. Super excited to be back. All-time high days are always great times to do podcasts. You know, the vibes are, immaculate, and super excited to jam on all things Bitcoin.
Love that. I mean, the jersey too, for the viewers and not the listeners, this was well before my time. I'm a 95, so like the earliest, I don't think I had a chance to watch MJ play. Definitely not. For me, it's always been Kobe, LeBron, Tim Duncan, and then obviously Steph, Luka, blah, blah, blah. But that is a nasty jersey you have behind you, my friend. That is super clean. You must get looks and comments on that all the time on Zoom calls.
It's funny. In this place, we get the Bird jersey, and then in another spot that we hang out at, we actually have a signed Larry Bird basketball as well. I'm a big Celtics fan. My dad's been a season ticket holder since like the 80s. So, So we're like, we bleed green all the way through. And then, I think Michael Jordan's last championship was 96. I remember watching that as a kid. I've got a few years on you. So it was a lot of fun growing up with basketball. But it's a very frequent Zoom comment. Great icebreaker.
Yeah, it's a great icebreaker, 100%. When I finally have a good enough place, and I'm in my parents' place right now, but I'm going to have a sick background, it's probably going to be all sports memorabilia as well. Okay, Bitcoin all-time high, 112.7, pretty wild stuff. We hit 111 months ago, and it seems like we've just been chilling. I think we're due, and again, we're not going to get into a lot of price action stuff. Neither Rich or I are giving financial advice. We're just two lads shooting the shit, having fun here. I think we're due for a vicious parabolic run-up, similar to sort of what happened in 2021. I think it was like a 5-6 week stretch when we went from 30 to 60. Like it was just, I remember waking up and it would be like, 40, and I'd wake up in the morning 8 hours later and it'd be at 45. And now 5K isn't that much, but back then, that's a lot. That's what, 13-14% right there. Are you in the same boat as me, Rich? Do you think we're going to see some violently good price action movement coming up soon?
So I've been on record a few times saying that I think 200 plus will fall this year. I think Jeff Park from Bitwise has been posting some awesome charts on his Twitter recently, and you can see that it's pretty much air above this kind of 112, 115 region. And I think there's a lot left to go in Bitcoin. The structural macro pieces are so positive here. Fiat debasement's only going to continue to increase. We've got a really exciting, easing cycle likely coming in early 2026. We're pretty well set up for fireworks. Again, not financial advice, but I think it's a great time to be in Bitcoin, and then also like building on top of Bitcoin as well. So I don't know. These sorts of days are always my favorite.
Yeah, well said there. So last time you were on 2 years ago, you did also call, when I looked at the show notes and prep for this, you did call that the institutions would be coming in like gangbusters, and that it would change the game forever. And it did. BlackRock's ETF, quickest growing ETF of all time. IBIT is an absolute machine. All of the ETFs for that matter are machines. We have incredible Bitcoin companies popping up all over the place. Before we get into core, what's your TLDR? What's your 2 cents on the ecosystem as a whole? Price action aside, not even talking about supply, just what's being built on and with Bitcoin, and tie that into the craziness with the institutions and how we just keep getting billions of dollars after billions of dollars. And then we haven't even discussed the corporate treasury codes, where you have the Sailors and the Meta Planets and the Nakamotos and the 21s who are just pumping into Bitcoin at a crazy rate as well. It seems like we're in a pretty darn good spot right now, Rich.
I actually looked at the podcast from 2023 as well beforehand to like kind of refresh on what we talked about at that point. And I think for that, I'm wrong on a lot of things, but I think that one was pretty on the money. And I think what we've really just started to see is really the first, maybe second batter of the first inning when it comes to Bitcoin and the institutionalization of Bitcoin. It's still so early. Yeah, it's the most exciting, biggest inflows of any ETF ever. And the chart is almost literally a vertical line, and it should overtake gold either later this year or sometime early next year. But I think what we've seen since we last talked was Bitcoin is now accessible by everyone, right? You can hold an ETF in pretty much any financial institution, retirement account, you name it. And the other side, it's now legitimized, right? Bitcoin is part of the financial system. This is not going anywhere. And it's only going to get that much more exciting, and there'll be more and more products to get off of it. And this was a big piece that we saw coming with Core pretty early. And I think what we're going to see over the next, let's call it 12 to 24 months, we're going to see an explosion in other Bitcoin products. We're going to have yield-bearing Bitcoin ETFs. We'll see a variety of structured products. We're already starting to see more of these, like option income ETFs based on IBIT or other, Bitcoin ETFs. And then we're going to see the derivative space around Bitcoin boom and just grow dramatically. Bitcoin's a $2-3 trillion asset today. The derivatives market for Bitcoin should be 10x, like it is with most assets.
Yeah.
So we're talking, decatrillions here, not too far from now. And there's just so much opportunity. We haven't scratched the surface of what this is going to look like. It's the most exciting opportunity in Wall Street. And for many folks out there, they're salivating that this is their 80s and 90s derivatives boom. And it's all going to be Bitcoin based, and Core's here to power it. But I've never been more excited about any time in Bitcoin history than I am right now. Also, just to touch on the treasury company, I forgot the kind of second piece of that question. The treasury company Meta, and I think this isn't like fully understood by a lot of folks, very few of these have actually started deploying into Bitcoin. They actually don't have access to the capital right now. You've got some vehicles like pumps, et cetera, that have been able to deploy already, but the vast majority of these haven't. So there's billions of dollars of bid that's coming from Bitcoin from these treasuries that will be permanent capital, very similar to MicroStrategy. And these are going to be a very hot trade. We've already seen some shift of bid generally into these treasury companies where they're giving levered exposure to Bitcoin. I see no signs of that slowing down, particularly under these different, kind of macroeconomic circumstances that we're coming into. And I think, let's call it 24 plus months out. I think some of these will get distressed and have some issues. But I think in the, immediate future, these are going to be super hot trades. And all of these groups need, passive yield as a way to help increase their Bitcoin per share, not just through financial engineering, especially as their premium to MNAV compresses. And that's exactly where we come in.
Yeah. Wow. Great segue too. One more thing on the Bitcoin treasury codes though. I've been, again, whenever Bitcoin hits all time, like even today, I think it was four messages, you and I are recording at 1:17 p.m. Eastern time right now, Rich. And I've had I want to say 3 or 4 messages from normie friends who have reached out every time we get an new all-time high, every time it breaks the news and it goes on something mainstream, or they probably see it on Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. That's when I get the texts, they start coming in. The 3 things I said today, and they were all about Bitcoin. I just said, remember how our parents had the opportunity, at least in the greater Toronto area, you could buy a house 30, 40 years ago for 100, 150K, pretty good house. And, 30 years later, you can sell it for over $1 million. We're not going to have that opportunity to 10x via real estate, but we may have this opportunity with Bitcoin. And again, I'm not saying go buy it because it's going to 10x. It's just, even just hearing you say the things you did, it's like there are so many opportunities right now to get into an asset that still has crazy room to grow, and people still don't want to get into it. On that note, the naysayers, because I remember the first time you came on, you had some great pitches on this too. Give me some of your like normie friend pitches present day in July 2025 with all-time high. What do you do to get them on board?
So I've been trying to get people to buy Bitcoin for the better part of a decade now. I think those people thought I was crazy when I first got into Bitcoin back in 2013. But around 2018 in that bear market, I distinctly remember being with a few friends in New York City. Bitcoin was around like 3.5K at the time. So again, it had gone up materially since I had gotten involved, but it was still like kind of in the grand scheme pretty cheap. And what I was telling everyone was 1 Bitcoin is going to pay for your kid's college. I felt super confident of that. And I was like, you should, if just anything is a hedge on like just tuition, inflation, et cetera, like just buy 1 Bitcoin for each one of your kids, sit on, I feel fairly confident. And that was the pitch that resonated with people because like the cost of higher ed in the US is so expensive.
Yeah.
Any sort of like hedge on that is interesting. And I was like, all right, well, if you're already allocating, I'm blank on the name of it, whatever that college fund is that you can put in a tax advantage way in the US for your kids, I was like, buy 1 Bitcoin, throw everything else into the college fund if you want to, but like buy 1 Bitcoin for it. And more or less every all-time high day, I'll get one of those people that will ping me and they'll be like, we're that much closer. And I'm like, all right, that was kind of what resonated with people at the time. I think for now, the story has really changed. Like the world in 2018 was much more sane place, I would say, than it is now. And Rao Paul actually has a lot of amazing charts to show this, but like the pace of fiat debasement has really increased. It's really since 2008, but it's continuing to accelerate. And if you look at it, their approximation is about 8% per year is kind of the actual debasement that takes place. So if you look at things like the S&P 500, you're actually kind of just breaking even with debasement, even if you have
Yeah.
like a pretty solid year. 8% is great of a return. And then what their analysis really has shown is there's only two things that kind of outpace this. One is crypto and one is tech stocks. And with that sort of a backdrop, it's like, okay, we're probably not going to have a 10x in real estate. Like that's probably not where it is now, where it's going to be for our generation. So where can you actually start to get these outsized returns? It's pretty much just backing the truck up in Bitcoin and crypto, Bitcoin, crypto, or tech stocks. And it's just kind of figuring out where you are on that spectrum, how you want to allocate. Obviously, it's a lot easier said than done to, kind of pick winners.
Yeah.
But I think things like Bitcoin are a fairly safe bet, and they're now pretty consensus. So if you're just trying to kind of like hedge all these other things around you, it's a great bet. And I think the most important part of any of these conversations is people's mindset will continue to change, right? And it's like we see more and more of these things change every year, but it's all about trying to deliver some pitch that resonates with folks.
Exactly.
And I think what's so exciting about Bitcoin is it's one of the few assets in the world that gets more exciting the higher it goes. And as of now, like there's very few assets that are like a couple trillion in total size that you think can actually 10x plus from here. And I think it's a pretty consensus bet that Bitcoin will do that. So I think that's what I will continue to do and proselytize. I've managed to convert quite a few folks over the last 12 years, but in my mind, everybody that can hold Bitcoin should hold Bitcoin.
So the biggest objection I get is, well, I already missed the boat. And that's like, that's the one that I personally, Rich, have the most trouble negating and providing a solution for, because I mean, again, I still think it's going very high, but no financial advice. We're not financial advisors. This is just two guys with hats on, talking about some great orange magical coin, but I think it's going very high. But and that's what I tell them, and then I give them the reasons why. But what do you say when they're like, oh, well, Rich, it's already at, $1.12 right now. Like, how much higher can it go? You got in at, 1K. Like, well, I'm not going to 100x. What do you say?
So I think there's a truism though that I fully believe. Like there's a little bit of the Bitcoin maxi hat on or whatever. It's like I think people do get into Bitcoin at the price they deserve, or like at the price where they get like that realization. So I've like
you can't tell him that though. It's like, well, John, you deserve to be in at $1.12. He's like, fuck you, Rich. Like he's
to be fair, I've had a lot of people that I tried to convince to get into Bitcoin a lot earlier come to me and say, okay, I didn't understand it then. Now I understand it.
Yeah.
And now it actually makes sense to me. And the most important part is that realization where they're comfortable holding it. Because what's really interesting is like people will tell the story of like, oh, if I just known about Bitcoin at like 70 cents, yeah, I would have been holding it to 112,000. You wouldn't have, right? Like the vast majority of people just wouldn't have, right? So,
100%.
But it's like for a lot of those people, once they eventually realized, oh no, this is a much better alternative store of value. Like, there's so much value here. I'm just going to hold it forever. And I think that's the realization people need to get to. So going back to that 2018 example, there's a lot of people that told me I was crazy at 3.5K and I tried to do it. And then 10, 20, 30, somewhere in that range, they started to allocate and now they're sitting on their stack and it's kind of become their forever stack.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. And the other chart that has been pretty popular is you can show Bitcoin against other assets.
Yes.
And if you look at Bitcoin compared to like the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, whatever, it's down 99%. So it's like you have to allocate. Like what else is going to have this sort of return profile, even if you want to just put in a small piece of your stack? Like I remember back in 2015, it was like at 1% of your stack should be Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Now you've got folks that are saying it should be 10%, 20%, or maybe on the extreme example, the 60-40 portfolio is now 60% bonds, 40% Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a understanding, kind of get people on there. And then it's just, if they do the homework, if they do the research, and if they can get there, I think they'll wind up very happy in the next few years.
And once someone acquires Bitcoin, unless you literally acquire it in a Pico top right before a mini recession or bear market, it's the only thing that people, at least in my network and my peers, literally hate. Like you cannot, like you need to give me such a compelling opportunity for me to sell my Bitcoin, Rich. Like I'm talking super compelling. Back in the day, I would do stupid shit like sell, some Bitcoin and buy NFTs. Like, do I regret that? Of course I regret that, but it's in the past. You regret a lot of things. But present day, like, there is not a whole lot that you can get me to sell my Bitcoin for. And I feel like the normies would feel the same way. And then they start realizing, holy shit, I have 0.1 Bitcoin, and then the new monthly goal is like put on another 0.1 every single month, or excuse me, 0.01, But anyways, okay. Let's jump into Core. You guys had a wild year last year. You passed 1 billion TVL. Congrats to you and the team. Not an easy feat by any means. And launched the first ever non-custodial Bitcoin staking product. Huge milestones. Before we get into those two things, give the listeners a quick elevator pitch on Core for those who missed episode numero uno, and then talk about those two incredible milestones that you and the team just achieved.
Totally. So Core is the leading Bitcoin scaling solution or the Bitcoin everything chain, as people have described it. So on one side, it's the largest Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem. There's hundreds of projects that are live. You can do everything from like really safe borrow lends all the way to like levered perps trading, bring over your ordinal, borrow against it, like you name kind of the different financial complexity that you want to go down. But it's a general purpose L1 where the unit of account is Core, and then all of the TVL is Bitcoin based, right? So it's a great place for you to go put your Bitcoin to work versus maybe just sitting on it passively. If you want to sit on your Bitcoin passively and earn yield on it, that's the other side of Core's product, which is the self-custodial Bitcoin staking. And that has about 6,000 Bitcoin in it today, so a fairly large financial product. And the idea is both of these are fed by the same Core token. So as we get more and more demand for the Core token on the ecosystem side, the yield gets better. As more people go chase yield in their Bitcoin, ecosystem gets stronger, and they all work together. And we're really the only one that kind of captures both sides of this Bitcoin experience, because what most folks are trying to do is something along that spectrum, right? Some people just want to sit on Bitcoin. They just want to hodl. That's totally fine. Our job is to try to convince you to go stake your Bitcoin, earn passive yield on it. It's fully self-custodial, so there is no principal risk, which is very critical for people like us that always want to have their Bitcoin, always want to be stacking sats. We don't want to have counterparty or principal risk. But for other folks that are ready to wrap, swap, etc., and come over and go use full Bitcoin DeFi, they can also go do that on Core. And our job is to bring people from one side of that spectrum over to the other at whatever cadence they're ready. And some people might never make it all the way over, and that's totally fine. But it's to have products and services that can help go unlock Bitcoin. Because ultimately, what we're trying to do at Core is be the second asset that Bitcoiners care about. We're never going to be as important to Bitcoiners as Bitcoin. We totally know that. But we want to be the utility layer or the execution layer to unlock Bitcoin, which is, as of today, a several $1 trillion space that's, fairly untapped.
Interesting. Oh man, so many ways to take this. The yield is, this is where I'm so curious, because I feel like a lot of folks like us who have a little more crypto degen in them, we have no problem messing around with the on-chain yield stuff. And we've obviously learned our lessons with the Terra Lunas and the FTXs and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to Bitcoin yield, and again, we haven't even gotten to your guys, liquid staking Bitcoin yet either. Like, there's a lot of fun stuff because you still get to have that Bitcoin like you talked about, but then you get the yield part, which is incredible. Like, up until this year, I feel like one of the only bad things about Bitcoin was that you couldn't get a yield on it. Every other crypto pretty much in the top 10, you could get a pretty solid yield except for Bitcoin. It just really wasn't there. And now it's here. So I absolutely love that. Can you explain, because I'm sure we're going to get this in the comments, so let's just get this over with right away. How do you guys get your yield? Because everyone always says, if you don't know where the yield is coming from, you are the yield. With Bitcoin, it's actually the easiest to explain, candidly. But how do you guys generate your yield and pass it along to your customers/consumers?
And that's actually a quote that I use fairly frequently, because I do think before you deploy into anything, you should fully understand all the risks, et cetera, whether it's Core or anything else. So I wanted to slightly correct one thing that you mentioned. Historically, if you want to go yielding your Bitcoin, your only option was lending your Bitcoin, right?
Exactly.
And we saw BlockFi, Genesis, et cetera, where doing that turned out really poorly, right? And with that, like, we should all, as Bitcoiners, if we didn't even experience the battle scars ourselves, we should learn from those that did before us and really demand the highest security assumptions that you can have and trust assumptions to make sure that whatever you're deploying into meets your individual demands. And that's a really key piece. And we built Core's non-custodial Bitcoin staking with that in mind as Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. And it's one of the reasons that we've been able to get integrated with so many custodians, et cetera, is they've realized the product built by Bitcoiners, which is very different than, some of the other folks out there trying to go produce Bitcoin yield. So how it works in Core system is you time lock it on Bitcoin. So you don't have to trust Core at all. You only have to trust Bitcoin. Time locks on Bitcoin have been live since 2015, so it's battle hardened, as is all things Bitcoin today. And when you time lock it, your risk surface that you have is that you cannot move that Bitcoin until that time lock elapses. So if you pick 30 days, you can't sell or move or transfer those funds for 30 days. In Core system, you can do it as short as 1 day, but most people kind of, different operational reasons, will do it slightly longer or roll it, or they have their own mechanism for doing so. But that's the only risk that you have. And that's the strongest trust assumption that you can have with Bitcoin is you actually maintain custody the entire time. There's no situation where someone else gets access to your Bitcoin. And that is the best, the gold standard, and also just so important. So by doing that, what is that time lock actually achieving? You're helping to secure Core's L1. So we're a full L1 ecosystem. There's 31 validators today. They're out there going and producing blocks, helping transactions propagate on the network, all things that validators do in these crypto systems. And they receive block rewards as part of the blocks that they produce, and they pass some of those back to the Bitcoin stakers, Core stakers, and the 75% of the Bitcoin hash rate that is also securing the Core chain. So in very short, you are earning rewards for the security you're providing to the Core chain. Those rewards are paid out in the Core token, and the Core token has a fixed supply of 2.1 billion, and it fully emits over 81 years. That's a very gradual decrease versus like yield farming or something similar.
Yeah.
And the idea is that we actually intersect with Bitcoin's curve itself, being a second block reward for Bitcoin miners and an additional yield for Bitcoin holders and Core holders.
I love that. I mean, very, very easily explained. Guys, makes total sense. Then we love to hear that too. I do remember, and I hate asking that. Not I hate asking that, like it sort of has to be asked, but I remember earlier on in the podcast journey, Rich, when we would have some companies come on the pod. I mean, Alex Mashinsky was, I think, episode number 8. And I asked him the same question I just asked, and he sort of gave it to me, but didn't give it to me. But I was too afraid to like actually ask again when it didn't make sense. If you wouldn't have given me a good explanation, I would have asked you again if I didn't understand it. But again, just giving me some spooky moments up top in the head. Dual staking. This is something that's really interesting. I think you guys are the first ones to do this within the Bitcoin space. Pretty novel, very cool. And again, I know this is a bit of a tough one, so my apologies for this question as well. But if you could explain dual staking, that would be lovely. And try to like pretend I'm 5 years old kind of thing and dumb it down big time for us.
So I've got a bunch of practice on this one, so we're prepared for it. So the way to think about any of these like Bitcoin staking systems, Core or otherwise, is you have a really large asset in the form of Bitcoin, and you've got a smaller asset that you're trying to provide yield in that denomination, right? So you have this math problem, right, where you have to go provide yield a much larger asset than yourself. How do you go do it? And the answer is you need an algorithmic balancing between your asset and this larger asset, in this case, Bitcoin. So how dual staking works is we reward you progressively for the amount of Core relative to the amount of Bitcoin that you stake. So if you just stake Bitcoin and no Core, you earn a lower rate. If you stake a lot of Core relative to Bitcoin, you earn a much higher rate. And what this does is it creates additional demand from the Bitcoin holder to go get Core, to go get that higher rate on their Bitcoin. And what that is doing is twofold. One, it's another demand lever, but it also is most importantly blending the Core and Bitcoin community. And as I said earlier in the podcast, our goal is to become the second asset that Bitcoiners care about. So by blending those two communities, we're affecting that goal or Bitcoin alignment as we think about it. And it's been hugely successful. So on Core, we released dual staking, I think it was like last November-ish. And by early this year, I think it's greater than 1/3 of all of the Core staked now belongs to Bitcoiners.
Wow.
So we've really started to cross the transom, and we're really the first group that's done that. But that's so important because we want to become part of this Bitcoin yield complex, if you will. which is whether you're a large holder, a fund, whether you're a treasury company, everyone's going to want Bitcoin yield, and we want to be powering it really is kind of like a bond layer for Bitcoin, right? Being this passive yield where you can then go do more and more complex things on top of it. But just being that kind of nice, subtle yield that you can then use to go build additional products and services on top of. And that's why dual staking is so critical, because it helps create that alignment between these two networks. And then we paint a different story for you. If you don't have something like dual staking, you have a gravity problem, as I would describe it, which is as more and more Bitcoin comes in, you just dilute the yield eventually to a state where it's no longer interesting, and you hit this kind of efficient frontier where people no longer want to go deploy into this. So I think what you'll see, and some of course competitors that have already started to do this, is they're starting to adopt dual staking models very similar to us, because this is a math problem at the end of the day. It's not a yield farming problem. And other folks have approached it more like yield farming. And by doing that, you kind of wind up creating uninteresting products over any time horizon.
And yeah, I don't love the like yield farming being the core sort of narrative or incentive or value prop, insert whatever word you want to insert, of an ecosystem. I just find it not like, yeah, you're not a bank account, like you got to be more than that. I think that's just my 2 cents. Rich, on a roll here. Got to take a quick break. Huge shout out to Prime XBT. Big sponsor of the show. When we get back, we're going to keep buzzing on everything Core related, and can't wait to get into Core's Bitcoin ETP, which is the first in Europe to offer yield. Huge shout out to Prime XBT, longtime friends and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. We love the team at Prime XBT as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. Doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet. You can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XBT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners to the Crypto News podcast. Use the promo code CryptoNews50, that's CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Rich, let's jump into your Bitcoin ETP. First one in Europe to offer the yield. Crazy. 2 years ago, Europe was like so anti everything. And this is just such a hot take of mine, but I feel like the legislators, some of them were spending time on Twitter and saw how hard they were getting shredded, and then said, oh, you know what, maybe we'll actually put some proper rules and regulations in. So, so we can have incredible companies come and get the MiCA certification, and have incredible companies like Core and make and create some novel products like the Bitcoin ETP with yield. They've done their job, but kudos on this. This was a great job. How did you guys get this across the finish line? And it must have been so, if I'm a betting man, and I am, it was probably a shit show to get this to market.
So before I answer that, we just hit 113.7, which is pretty crazy. We're like real time, all time high blowing out, which is epic.
I love it.
Just to show that this is not recorded. It's like open dialogue between two friends, just shooting shit. Yeah. In terms of getting the ETP live, definitely a headache. And, each different country that it launches in, there's a whole different series of tests and different things that you have to go comply with. And there's other countries that we also want to go expand it to inside of Europe. And we'll continue to do so, bring some to the rest of the world. There's several Asian countries that we're having different discussions with their local stock markets, some in the Middle East. And of course, the big prize is the US. Now that we have these Solana staking ETFs, we're going to see a whirlwind of these things. I think we'll see Bitcoin staking ETFs not far from now in the US as well. And of course, Core wants to power it. In terms of the product, this is where I think this staking is kind of this base layer solution is so interesting, is now that you have passive yield, you can at least offset fees in some of these, or you can provide interesting returns. And that just unlocks more and more of these different products and services. And very similar to that kind of spectrum that I painted for you, from like Bitcoin staking to Bitcoin DeFi, there's also a spectrum in TradFi wrappers, right? Like you're going to see people that just want vanilla ETFs. You're going to see ETFs that have staking yield associated with it. You're going to see all sorts of complex derivative products. I think you'll see Bitcoin bonds by the end of the year. You're going to see so many of these different products and services that where native yield becomes very powerful to go create these products. And at minimum, it's a yield enhancer. At best, it's a self-contained structured product. So this was really our first foray. It was a world first. I think it was April of last year, I think. And we've continued to see more and more inflows. We'll see more and more of these pop up. But we couldn't be any more excited to be part of this complex. And this is a question I get from a lot of Bitcoiners. It's always like, the ETFs are the worst thing to ever happen to us. There's so much centralization and all that sort of thing. And part of me agrees. The other part of me says, this train has left the station. There's no stopping kind of the financialization of Bitcoin, the Wall Streetification of Bitcoin, if you will. Why, as a Bitcoiner, would you not want to be part of this in a way to help shape it? And the analogy that I've given a lot of people has been, there's a world where we don't solve the security budget issue in Bitcoin. Core itself can't, support enough of the miners, et cetera, over the long enough term. And by doing that, you wind up in a spot where the only people that can be miners are these ETFs, because they have fees that are allowing them to go mine at a loss. And it's like, that would be terrible, right? That is not the world that we want to live in. So this is why I encourage, all Bitcoiners to, try to shape this as in any way that we can, because the more that we can be involved in this transition, the better it's going to work out for Bitcoin holders everywhere.
Well said. Okay, we are getting tight for time here, so geez, we gotta have you on again for a proper longer pod. You guys are soon launching the liquid staking LstBTC. This will hopefully solve the classic problem of Bitcoin's negative carry, the Bitcoin negative carry problem. Tell us about the Bitcoin LST and how it allows you to gain yield while not locking up your BTC.
So this is a combined partnership between Core and Maple Finance. Maple Finance has been one of the fastest growing DeFi protocols this year. Team is absolutely crushing it.
They're so cracked. They're tearing it up.
Just crushing it. Amazing team. And we came together earlier this year as like, what if we put two amazing teams together and go, try to launch a best-in-class LST and a best-in-class Bitcoin yield product. And we came up with LstBTC. And the idea is it wraps Core's Satoshi tier dual staking yield. So the highest tier of dual staking that we have in the Core ecosystem, it averages about 4 to 6% in Bitcoin terms. And then you get a receipt token that you can go bring with you throughout DeFi or CeFi, all while being custodied at a major custodian like a BitGo or a Copper. So being institutional grade from day one. And if you're not ready to mint through a custodian, you can swap into it in DeFi. There'll be a variety of different pools that you'll be able to go do that throughout several major L1s. But we were super excited about it because this is the key ingredient to really supercharging Bitcoin DeFi, is this yield-bearing Bitcoin LST that can be used by both individuals and retail. The majority of products out there today kind of fit into one or two of those buckets. They don't really fit into both. This is truly kind of a one size fits all. And we're super excited about it is this allows our yield to get ported to even more places, right? So whether or not you're able to dual stake yourself, or you just want to use Core's dual staking yield in the form of this LST, you can go do that. And we're partnering with a number of different major L1s, different protocols to go do that. And we think the market for this is easily in the billions. So we're super fired up about this. And then I think the other piece that's also important to think about is just how that works with Core's flywheel, right? So for each one of these LSTs that gets minted, you actually see more Core get allocated and dual staked against it. And by doing that, you're actually helped to move that flywheel, right? So Core gets taken out of circulation, the amount of yield increases, and you see that create more demand for the LST, which is a really powerful flywheel. I can't be on a crypto podcast and not talk about flywheels. It's kind of a requirement. But yeah, it's super exciting. We've got a great partner in Maple. We can't wait to bring it to the world not too far from now.
That's awesome. What's next for you guys? Again, we're pretty much, we're 10 days after the halfway mark. In 2025, we talked about a lot of Bitcoin, a lot of everything, a lot of Core. I love your 200K price prediction. By the minute, it keeps getting better and better. But what specifically for Core, what else do you guys, and I know you can't tell us everything, but what can you tell us? What else is popping off in 2025?
So we actually just tweeted out our roadmap for H2 to give the people something to kind of coalesce around for the last half of this year. And it's going to be action-packed is the way to put it. So we're going to see like a little bit of a mini Core season emerge in the next couple months. There's a bunch of products and protocols on Core. They're going to be launching tokens, revamped DeFi protocols, but you're going to see a bunch of stuff that you can go deploy into. And if you want to farm, you can farm. If you want to go get yield, you can go get yield. You can do anything in between that you could do in another ecosystem, but it's all Bitcoin based. And we think it's going to be the most exciting time in any Bitcoin ecosystem ever. Core is already number one and by every DeFi metric in the Bitcoin space, but we think this is going to be another huge leg up. And it's a great time to be early into an ecosystem with so many of these products that are all going live in succession over the next 2 to 3 months. On the kind of platform side, we've got some very interesting platform improvements that I can't fully talk about yet, but we gave a little bit of summary around. One, there'll be some major performance fixes. We already have the fastest block time, highest TPS, but you're going to see both of those increase pretty demonstrably over the back half of this year. You're going to see some interesting revenue redistribution mechanics. You're going to see some interesting things related to fees. It's really making it the best environment for builders and users to go deploy, because we want to be the home of all Bitcoin DeFi. We're going to announce a major stablecoin partnership, major hardware wallet partnership, and a few other pieces, but it's going to be absolutely packed in the core ecosystem over the next couple months.
I guess I should ask, what aren't you guys doing? Holy crap, a little bit of everything. Last thing, where can our listeners find you personally, and of course, Core online and on socials?
Still getting used to this. x.com/RichRine. I always want to say Twitter, but yeah.
I still say Twitter.
So we're pretty active everywhere. That's where you can find me. Core's always doing something. So a variety of like Twitter spaces. You can go into the Discord, pop in, join any of the different chats. Core welcomes everyone. We're one of the largest communities in all of crypto. No contributions too small. Bitcoin DeFi is still so early, and there's just so much opportunity to get involved. So definitely, feel free to give us a shout. You can DM me, all that sort of thing.
Love it. Folks, what an episode with Rich, Rines, initial contributor to Core DAO. Every time he comes on, he's bringing the heat. And honestly, I'm not just blowing smoke. He's got a great voice too. You're still on. You can hear me. You have a good, like, deep radio voice. And you
got a face for radio, as they say.
You got a sick radio voice, and I wish I had your voice. But huge shout out to Rich for coming on the show today. Bitcoin DeFi, hitting 200K Bitcoin before 2026. Institutionalization of Bitcoin, still so bloody early. Dual staking, Bitcoin ETPs with yield, LSTs, you name it. Huge shout out to Rich and the team for making this happen. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. To my team, love you guys. Thank you for everything. You literally mean the world to me, and I cannot do this without you. And to the listeners, love you guys as always. Keep on touching grass. Happy Bitcoin all-time high. And keep on growing those bags. Keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Love you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.